Public school upgrades coming soon. I'm Lisa Oligas, and this is Newsmakers. The Joplin School District is preparing for $9.5 million in construction projects impacting 3 elementary schools. We'll be talking about those projects and the growth of early childhood education and flight schools in today's program. We begin our conversation about the planned school renovations with Superintendent Dr. Carrie Saketa. Welcome back to Newsmakers. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here. Thank you.
So 3 schools are the focus of renovations: Jefferson, Royal Heights, and McKinley. Are these schools considered the older buildings in the district?
Yes, they're 3 of our older buildings, and after the tornado, when we rebuilt several schools, it was pretty obvious that some of the schools, there was a stark difference in some of the classrooms and some of the accommodations that we had, and that's why we're focusing on those schools.
All right, well, one thing they all have in common are expansions of kindergarten rooms. Are you seeing lots of growth prompting the need for bigger rooms?
We're seeing a little bit of growth across the district, not a significant amount of growth, but what we are seeing is the difference in the functionality of the newer schools that we have with 1,100 and 1,200 square foot kindergarten rooms compared with some of the kindergarten rooms we have that are 700 to maybe 800 square feet, and the accommodations in those rooms, whether it be cabinetry, a restroom, and so on. So we want to make sure that across the district that all of our kindergartners and our teachers have the same accommodations.
It's a similar experience then.
Yes, similar experience.
And more room to play can't be a bad thing for little kids, right?
That's right. And there's a lot of movement in kindergarten, and if we give kindergartners what they need in today's 21st century when it comes to classroom space, with all the manipulatives and everything that they utilize in the classroom, that will be a better experience for them.
Okay, well, let's go building by building to talk about the plans, beginning with Jefferson Elementary. I know the entryway is being targeted for safety reasons. So what is the current concern there? Well,
we put an airlock system in there just a few years ago to help with safety, but it's still not on par with the rest of the schools in the district. So the rest of the schools in the district, when you come in, there's a 2-layer system, there's 2 doors, and you can be buzzed in, but then you typically go right into the office before you're allowed to go out to the rest of the building. That gives an opportunity for people to sign in or to check in with our system, our background check system. So this would just add an extra layer of support at Jefferson.
Very important these days.
Yes, very important.
So you're adding classrooms in Jefferson as well. So let's talk about some of the additions. What are the classrooms that would be added? Some maybe deal with special education. Why is there more space needed at Jefferson?
Well, just like the kindergarten classrooms, some of our special education rooms or other ancillary spaces do not have enough space, or they don't necessarily have a dedicated room in some of these buildings. So we're going to put on a kindergarten and special education suite at Jefferson, and that will allow us to use in a flexible way other classrooms for other things like art and music. But also the library is important too. It needs updating at Jefferson.
So the library is going to be improved and renovated. The cafeteria is going to get kind of a workover. Why do we need to work on our cafeterias?
Well, our cafeterias, depending on how many students go in for lunch at one time, all of our cafeterias and our older elementaries could use a little bit of an expansion, and definitely brought up to speed when it comes to the decor and everything else as far as the experience is concerned. And then we're also looking at food service department in there as well as their functionality in the cafeterias to make sure that they can do adequately what they need to do to serve the students.
It was mentioned that you need to do some renovations of the nurse's office. What changes would be made there?
Well, the nurse's office is very small at Jefferson, for instance, and so is the principal's office. I mean, everybody's crammed into a small area. So we want to make sure that they have ample space. Their rooms are going to be bigger. They're not going to be massively bigger, but they're going to take care of their space, and inflow and out, ingress and egress, access in and out will be much improved, and also a little waiting area for the students.
You mentioned art and music. How will those rooms change, and have they been shared rooms thus far?
Yeah, in the past, in a lot of our buildings, there have been shared rooms, so we're going to have dedicated rooms. The best situation would be art to have its own dedicated room, and music to have its own, and so that's what we're striving for in all the buildings.
Yeah, I mean, you have all those supplies, you might need more space. So Royal Heights Elementary is getting some of the same treatments with the cafeteria, library, and art rooms. Was it the same process of why it was needed there?
Yes, their addition is going to go on the south side of their building, towards the west portion of the property. It's kind of the same situation there with kindergarten. They need a bit more space. And when we added flight schools all over the district, which is the 4-year-old rooms, that is also a need for more room. And they're just like Jefferson, their library is in need of improvement. And also their cafeteria has refrigeration units sitting out in the cafeteria, so it's very loud, and it also takes up space. So we're trying to make sure that we have better accommodations for them.
Perfect. So we mentioned you're expanding or adding special education rooms. Are you needing space for more kids or more space to better facilitate that special learning?
Facilitate special learning is really utmost importance. And I think what we're also doing is we're also looking at any kind of growth we have. There's a projected growth over the next several years of 2 to 3% over several years going down the road. And who knows what the future holds. There's some housing additions going in all over Joplin. But I think first functionality, and second, a little eye towards making sure that we can accommodate the students we have down the road.
Yeah, this is a big set of projects. The board approved the hiring of a construction manager at risk to coordinate the project. So some might wonder if that's just an extra cost. Does it help with budget or timing? What is the whole point of a construction manager at risk?
Well, instead of doing just a hard bid on the whole project, which you have to have everything done and taken care of ahead of time, this process should allow us to get better pricing, and it'll allow for the construction manager to work with the architect ahead of schedule before packages are put out for bid. So what it does is it allows us to work with the groundwork and getting the building out of the ground and bid those kinds of packages, whether it be concrete, steel, and so on. And then the next phases would be the classrooms and everything so on. So we can bid it mostly all at the same time, but we can start working ahead of the project and get that moving and get some cost analysis before we decide to go out for hard bid.
Does it help you when you're trying to balance multiple projects, multiple schools, multiple locations?
Well, it helps to have one company that you can work with too, and I think that was one of the reasons why we chose Crosslands locally, and it was a very competitive process, and they've worked with us in the past, and we feel like they have the capacity to be able to do those projects. And even though we'll have 3 different job superintendents, we'll have one person that will be overseeing the whole project.
So this is a $9.5 million project, and you didn't have to call out for a bond issue. Tell us how you prepared for this and where the money's coming from.
So over the last several years, our capital reserves have grown, and we've done a good job of budgeting. I really appreciate our finance office and everything they've done, and the board in supporting all the projects we've done at the same time. So we're able to use reserve funds for these projects right now and not have to go for a bond issue just for these specific projects and what we're calling phase 1.
Does that make it easier? So, and what is phase 2 if this is phase 1?
Well, phase 2 is we're going to look at what we have a long-range facility planning committee, and they're going to make recommendations on the next set of schools to go, and then look at different funding opportunities for that, whether it be reserves or what have you, and then what the timeliness of that would be. And we're trying to get projects put together over the next 10 or 15 years, so the board can look at things and say, when do we want to do these projects, how soon do we want to do them, and what's the scope of those projects so that we can plan for the future.
It certainly makes for better planning.
It makes for better planning.
Better budgeting. You also recently got board approvals for capital outlay projects for classroom furniture for 7 elementary buildings. What needs to be upgraded when it comes to furniture?
Well, several of our buildings haven't had new furniture probably for 25 to 30 years or more in some cases. And so it goes back to providing the experience that's similar across the district. If you go into Dover Elementary, Soaring Heights Elementary, or Irving Elementary, you're going to see 21st century schools with newer furniture, newer style furniture, furniture that's in better shape, obviously. And so we wanted to provide that experience all across the district and all of our schools too, and it was just time.
Yeah. So the school renovations included some early childhood classrooms. We're going to talk about that in our next segment, but the renovations this summer are considered phase 1. So phase 2, what are some of those other long-range facility projects you've identified? Is there something that you think, okay, we know that we have to do this down the road? Yeah,
at some point, Stapleton Elementary, it needs to be expanded. We have some students that we need to take care of across the district that have special needs. We are doing that right now. We could do it better if we had more expansive space for some of those students, and also take care of students in that part of town instead of maybe going to a different school at Irving or some other school to be taken care of with their needs. So we're trying to keep kids as much as possible, regardless of their needs, in the attendance zone that that they live in.
Because at one time, Cecil Floyd Elementary was kind of a go-to for special education students. Right. Does, though, it create a need for more staffing then when you have those classrooms in individual schools? Do you have to hire more folks because of special education learning?
Yes, it can, but depending upon where we have the teachers now and the paraprofessionals, sometimes we can move people around a little bit. But when you have kids with certain needs, it's good to have them in certain parts of the city, also closer to their attendance zone, and other teachers that do like work with the students with those needs clustered in the building together. So really, I think just the needs of our students has also necessitated that. Stapleton Elementary could be on par with Dover, Hill Elementary, Soaring Heights, and Irving when it comes to size. And also the approach at Stapleton, we could really improve the safety at Stapleton by an approach on the north side for parent and parent-student drop-off and pickup. And we have some property that we had purchased over the years that will help us do that.
And for those, it is kind of a school in an awkward setting. It's on that South Main, correct?
Yes.
And it's high speeds sometimes on the road, so I know that could be some safety concerns there.
There are some safety concerns, and that intersection is kind of a hot spot for accidents. So I think anything we can do for parking on the north of the building, approach for parents, and then also the parents queuing up on Pennsylvania Street behind it there to the east would make a difference for them and everybody's experience in and out of school. That's twice a day, 170 school days a year, not counting if there's summer school there. Right. So it's a big deal.
Are you seeing growth in a certain part of the city, in certain school zones or attendance zones, as you would say?
I think over the years what we've seen is movement of more students anyway towards the east. And that's what our demographer told us in 2019, that Joplin is growing ever so slightly, but the movement and the students are tending to live a little bit more to the south and a little bit more to the east.
And I guess it also can depend on construction and home building.
That's right, yeah.
All right. Well, Dr. Skeda, thank you. We're going to take a break, and when we return, we'll learn all about the Little Eagles flight schools. Back to Newsmakers, where we are getting a look at planned renovations and expansions at Joplin schools. Returning with us is Superintendent Dr. Carrie Saketa, and joining the conversation is Heather Serbrook, Early Childhood and Flight School Director. Welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So flight schools are becoming a big thing. The district has the Early Childhood Center building near Irving, but a few other schools have their own early childhood classrooms known as Little Eagles Flight Schools. Those are being added to Royal Heights and McKinley. So first off, tell us, why are they needed at individual schools as opposed to, say, expanding the Early Childhood Center?
Absolutely. We've had an incredible response from our Joplin community and families that are looking and seeking for early learning opportunities for their preschoolers. Flight schools are for our 4-year-olds, and we are just looking forward to setting them up to be successful for kindergarten when they're ready. And so the overwhelming response has prompted our addition to many of our flight school additions.
Yeah. So you mentioned 4-year-olds. Does this align with what some places call pre-kindergarten? Is it the same thing?
Yes, it is preschool, so pre-kindergarten, just working with our students to be ready for their kindergarten year once they're ready. So still looking at social, emotional, academic, just social play for them, just preparing them for kindergarten, really.
Yeah.
It's an excellent opportunity, and it's full day for the students.
So you mentioned full day. Flight school does run the length of a regular school day. Years ago, pre-K was half day, sometimes even just 3 days a week. Before that, kindergarten was a half day. Things have changed. Can 6.5 hours be too much school for some little kids?
We have a really strategic plan for our early learners with this a full day option for them. We break it up with multiple times for play centers, learning opportunities. They do have a rest time. It's just very developmentally appropriate. Our teachers are very well trained in that. And so really we're not seeing that they're too exhausted. They're eager to learn. And when you break it up throughout the day for the students, for the activities, it's really appropriate for them and prepares them again for incoming kindergarten the following year.
Yeah. For years I was an education reporter, and it's been proven that the early years are some of the most important for a child. So what are some of the things students are learning at flight school? And you mentioned it's a kind of a combination of educational skills, social skills. Kind of elaborate on that.
Absolutely. We have standards that we follow with a pacing guide for our teachers to adhere to. So they're learning numbers, letters, sounds, social emotional play centers, just time to interact with peers, and just everything that they need to learn to be successful little learners.
Can it be even sometimes like walking down the hall in a straight line?
Yes, procedures, expectations are heavily taught as well.
Yeah. So how do these classes complement or compare to Parents as Teachers? That is another program you have in the district, right?
Sure, yes. Parents as Teachers is actually where it starts. We have students that are enrolled with Joplin schools, and then they're screened through our parent educators, through Parents as Teachers. And then we identify the students that are good, eligible students for our pre-K program for our 3-year-olds and our 4-year-olds, and then our flight school for our 4-year-olds.
So, Dr. Saketa, are flight schools open to all kids, or are there any kind of qualifying requirements?
Yeah, there's an enrollment process, and we've had very good response. And the students need to be able to be brought to the school, but they can be bused. Now, we don't know that we had very many kids that were bused, but we are allowed to bus 4-year-olds. So transportation is an issue, and they need to be in the attendance zone where those schools are. But as we expand it out, we're going to have more opportunities throughout the district. So, and one thing I want to add is what we found recently in some old files from back well over 30 years ago was the district was looking at putting 4-year-old classrooms in as early as the early 90s. And that was talked, but it never got off the ground. Mm-hmm. So this was something we all came about, through interest of teachers, and especially a lot of teachers that had students, talking to parents and some surveys, and administrators and principals getting together, thinking, it's time that we brought some 4-year-olds in and helped get them ready. It's a real big benefit to get 4-year-olds ready and kind of ease them into the process of being kindergartners for the next year. And we know some really good gains. We're going to have 40, I think it was 48 kids we had last year, and every one of them are very ready for kindergarten.
Well, I believe, you talked about it being in the 90s. There were years where there were pros and cons. A little bit of the controversy was, will it hurt the market for preschool? Will it hurt, the private industry? But there are some parents who couldn't afford to send their kids to preschool. Right. So tell us why you feel like there is demand for this. Well,
we know that child care is a big deal. It's a big deal everywhere. It costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of money for someone who runs a child care facility to run it adequately, and it's expensive for parents. This is an opportunity for parents to have child care, but to have it in a way that's structured, that they know is structured, in a place that maybe their older children are already going to school, and it gets kids acclimated. And like Heather said, we try to do it developmentally right. There's just enough to get them ready for school using standards and things that if we could send it home to every parent. If you talk to your child like this and you give them these lessons and you do these different things and provide these experiences at home with other children, you're going to get your kids ready. And this will get kids ready in a social way as much as anything to be a good, quick learner the first day in kindergarten.
Yeah. So when do folks register, and can these classes fill up quickly? At one point, have you had a waiting list?
We actually do have a waiting list currently. We opened enrollment end of January this year,
Wow.
honestly. And so right now we're placing students in those spots, but we do have a waiting list in all of the areas. So
Even
there-
for the ones that are newly going to be constructed? Or when will those be ready, Dr. Segura?
It's probably going to be a couple years before
Okay.
the new ones are ready, because we broke ground, ceremonially, but to really be getting out of the ground, it's going to be a few months yet, and then obviously you're talking about probably 14 to 18 months of construction. So probably a couple years before the new schools are ready.
Yeah. So right now, a waiting list, and then, so for next year, they have to be on the game to register by January typically?
Yes, we do roll that out, and we go by the timestamp of the enrollments, so we can fill those classrooms, and we're very excited because the response is overwhelming, and that is a wonderful thing. That just shows that there's a lot of drive for our early learners here in Joplin, parents wanting their students to be in the preschool setting.
Yeah. So for those who can't get in, what are some recommendations? What can they do at home then to help prepare their child? Are there community resources that might help them to get a child ready for the learning environment?
Absolutely. I would say interact with your students at the library. Check out the state DESE website for the Missouri Early Learning Standards so that they can educate themselves as well about that, and just really interact with your student. Be present, read with them, talk with them, point out things in environmental print. Just be involved with your student will set them apart.
We mentioned parents as teachers. Is that program also have a waiting list, or is it something people could still take advantage
Oh,
of?
no. Any family can take advantage of parents as teachers. They had a stellar year last year with the most home visits and screenings that they'd ever done. So they're definitely there. It's a fantastic resource and such valuable educators that we have in parents as teachers.
What would you say? You have, I know you reported the board increases in interest in all of the early childhood programs. What kind of statistically numbers have you seen or percentages in growth in that area?
I would say it's doubled in the past couple of years at Joplin Early Childhood as far as our enrollment and the need. And so we're seeing just a tremendous trend.
And is the early childhood center itself maxed out?
It truly is. Yes, it is, which is a fantastic problem to have. We're very excited about that.
Yep.
And do you see, in the long run, Dr. Scudder, are you seeing a difference in the kids in kindergarten when it comes to preparedness? I mean, their success, and is it making kindergarten easier for kids?
Well, some of the statistics that I've seen that's been collected over the last couple of years is our kids who've been to our preschools have improved drastically and are a little bit further ahead than some of the other schools, depending on the preschool that they came from. And so those early learning experiences, if a family has the opportunity to do what Heather was talking about, and that's understandable, by all means do so. But at school, our job is when parents have to work and they can't be there, or there's nobody there to take care of the student and they need that extra support, is to give them the best that we can in the school environment to mimic what families do their very best to do, to give them a lot of words, opportunities to talk, converse, hear a lot of different words, and have experiences out in the community and also experiences with their peers so that they can be socially adaptable to the school environment when they get there and ready to learn, and make learning fun at the same time, but immerse the standards of learning in the fun activities while they're at school so that they're learning while they're having fun.
Do teachers feel like this improves behavior in the kindergarten when we've had kids have a chance early on to get acclimated to other kids?
Yes, absolutely. Having come just out of the elementary world where I've been for many years, we do see that the students that have those early learning opportunities are a little ahead of the game, both academically and behaviorally. And so it helps because they're used to the school setting. They know the expectations. They know how to walk down the hallway, interact with their peers, work at short times at the tables together. So it's definitely very beneficial.
And how important, I mean, what are some of the benefits of early childhood education in preparing a student? I mean, is it true that the brain absorbs more when they're at this young age?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like the more that you can stimulate and engage the brain, the more that they learn. And they're showing us that. And they're so eager to learn when they're at the early childhood center and preschools. They're just like a sponge, just picking up everything that they can.
So Dr. Segura, is there a goal of having an early childhood in every elementary?
At least a 4-year-old classroom in every elementary. That is a goal, yes. And then as far as the early childhood center right now that we have that's full, we're going to have to make some decisions down the road on that if the interest is still there.
Would you add on to that building or try and find maybe another location to have another early childhood center to serve more?
That's to be determined. Those are both excellent questions. Probably not a lot of opportunity to add on to that building. There might be some space available because that footprint is not that big, but that's a possibility. And then also the other opportunity would be for 3-year-olds across the district, would you want to put something in another part of town possibly? So if it gets to that point, then we'll have to make some decisions.
Heather, what's the difference, between 3 and 4 years old? Can it be dramatic? Is there a different learning curve with 3-year-olds as of 4-year-olds?
There is a little bit of a different learning curve there for them. Of course, they're a year younger, and so our expectations and time on task looks a little bit different at 3 than 4. So our standards look just a little bit different for each of those levels. But again, the teachers just work diligently with them and find age-appropriate activities and skills for them to work on.
Excellent. So what else can we mention about the approach to early childhood learning? It is learn through play. So for those who don't understand how maybe a pre-kindergarten classroom works, give us some ideas of what happens. I know we sent somebody to the Smart Start, which happens during summer school. Tell us what some of the kind of things that the kids do there.
Absolutely. So a lot of center time that's driven by the students, whether that's interest of which center that they want to go to, that the teachers have set out to, honestly, some literacy centers as well, math centers, where they probably don't realize they're learning those literacy and math skills at those centers, but the exploration that they're doing through those centers just kind of drives their learning, and you get to see all of the creativity that the students have in the centers. And so it's just a lot of it's just student driven. It's beautiful to watch them interact with their peers, yet construct something of their own imagination.
So sometimes, we used to always have building blocks. Are there little kitchen sets? Are we playing with dolls and things, or what are some of the environments that they might see?
Absolutely, all of the above. There are kitchens, there are blocks, there are sensory bins, there's home living stations that they can play in, books whether they're early readers or if they're just looking at the pictures and being exposed to the pictures in the books. It's just a variety. It's changed so much over the years. It's just amazing to watch.
So one point can be of controversy is, when do we initiate technology? Because some of those kids are already getting that stuff at home. Are there different computers with learning skills like that, or are we keeping those out of these centers?
Yes, we keep the technology out of these centers other than what might be projected onto the wall. Maybe that might be an ABC song, a wiggle break song, but they don't have iPads or Chromebooks and laptops in these settings. They do get enough screen time often at home, so we want to limit that, and we want them to have more interaction and time both with their peers and the staff, honestly, so that they can learn and be engaging that way.
Excellent. Well, lots of information, and good luck to you. There's more centers on the horizon. They'll just have to get under construction. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That wraps up this edition of Newsmakers. Thanks to our guests, and thank you for watching.